But anyways, you have an interesting story this week about one of America's largest and most storied gun makers having kind of a rough go of it in terms of their sales. If you want to tell us a little bit more about what you uncovered.
Yeah, Smith & Wesson reported their quarterly earnings for their first quarter of this year, which ended in July, and sales were down 69%, which is incredible. They went from $274.6 million in sales the first quarter of 2021 to just $84.4 million in the first quarter of 2022. So, that's a drop of $190 million, which is insane. But it shows you quite a lot about what the state of the gun market today. You had 2 years of extremely hot gun sales. The market was just exploding, and now it's receding. It's going back down to where you might expect it to be, in a normal, non-pandemic, non-riot environment. Now that still, to be fair, is elevated from where it was before 2020, and Smith & Wesson's financials reflect that. But this is obviously the end of an era, the end of an incredible record-breaking surge, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's important context, because obviously when you hear of a company declining revenue nearly 70%, obviously that might raise some red flags among some people, but it is important to know that is coming off of a absolute historic period of gun sales, where at one point I believe they had something like $1 billion in revenue because sales were just that high, that extreme.
They had the first $1 billion sales year for any gun company in American history.
Right.
So, coming off of that, they're now seeing their sales recede back down to lower levels. And you've seen this trend. Ruger reported similar drops in sales, although this drop was more severe than Ruger's. But those are the two American publicly traded gun companies, by the way. So those are the two of the largest. The other ones, we don't necessarily get their financials because they're not public companies. So this is how you can judge how the industry is doing. And these are the only two you could potentially buy stakes in, right? As a normal investor on the market. So that's another reason why what's happening with them matters quite a lot. But yeah, this is a trend that you've seen coming for a while now, really based on the FBI's background check numbers, which are the best analog for sales. They don't tally 1-to-1 each gun sale. There's several reasons why, you're not capturing every gun sale with those FBI background check numbers. For instance, they're not done on all gun sales, or you can buy multiple guns on a single check, or you could use a concealed carry license in place of a check. So there's a lot of different reasons why the numbers don't match up exactly, but they are the best analog, and they've been decreasing significantly since their peaks in 2020. They were down again last month from 2021 August to 2022 of August, and but not by a ton. They're still leveling out again above their pre-pandemic levels. So this reflects that, I would say.
Right. And I believe they're still over $1 million a month, which is still relatively high considering historical trends. One thing I will say it'll be interesting to take a look at with revenue from companies like Smith & Wesson and Ruger is these last quarterly earnings reports end in July. And you've seen sort of since then kind of a big assault weapons push in the political arena. And obviously we're getting into midterm season, election season, which can also have an effect in gun sales. Obviously it's not a presidential election, which tends to be the biggest drivers of gun sales. But still, you could see when things like assault weapons bans are in the realm of possibility, depending on which way the election goes, you could see another possible spike again. So that will be, I think, one thing to keep in mind for maybe future earnings reports to see if maybe we see a slight rebound.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a trailing indicator, right? Because these are figures that ended in July. And so we don't see what happened, in August and so far in September.
Right.
And there have been some political developments like the assault weapons ban passed in the House that you mentioned. We'll also have to track where exactly that is having an impact or how much of an impact it's having. Because again, I mean, there is some thought that perhaps people who want to buy an AR-15, they were already motivated to do that the last 2 years before this assault weapons ban passed. So whether it'll have the same kind of impact previous political fights have had, it remains to be seen. But you're right that they're positioned for a potential rebound just based off the political environment. And Smith & Wesson is fairly well positioned to take advantage of any sort of spike in demand that comes along. Their CFO, Dina McPherson, said, quote, "Our balance sheet remains strong with $115 million of cash and no debt, and we expect to continue generating strong cash flow for the foreseeable future." So it's not as though Smith & Wesson is going out of business, as you might, someone might worry with the numbers like this. The business is just coming back down from its all-time highs to what may constitute a new normal. We've been talking about that for a while at the Reload. This new normal, where's the new normal? What's the new bottom? And so it seems we might be getting to that new bottom for gun sales. And again, it still remains elevated over the previous highs, before 2020. So it's not catastrophic news for the gun industry. It's just something that was expected to happen and now is happening. The surge can't last forever.
Right. Yeah. It's just returning to a more sustainable level of revenue, as you said. One thing I think, aside from the political development of the AR-15, this might be a little bit more speculative on my end, but maybe one more thing that you could see a possible rebound in is the Supreme Court's gun carry decision. You suddenly have 7 or so states where more and more people will, at least in theory, be able to get carry permits. Smith & Wesson sells plenty of guns that plenty of people choose to carry. I, for example, carry a Smith & Wesson gun for my personal everyday carry. So you could see maybe a rebound in sales in some of these very populous states where suddenly people can get carry permits. So that might be one thing to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah. I mean, the company, first off, they reported selling nearly 60,000 handguns in that last quarter and 14,000 long guns, so rifles and shotguns. But of course, that was out of 128,000 handguns that they actually shipped,
right?
And 28,000 long guns. So, they report that a lot of their retailers were selling through inventory, and so they were replenishing stock, but they expect that to not be as much of a problem in the future. I would say that you're right. The Supreme Court's decision and the subsequent liberalization of gun carry laws throughout the country in some of the most populous states like California, New York, New Jersey, Maryland will probably have an impact long-term, or more like mid-term, I would say, on Smith & Wesson and these other gun makers. Smith & Wesson is a big player in that market. Like you mentioned, I used to carry a Smith & Wesson. You carry one now. I might switch to the new Shield Plus, so we'll see. There's a lot of good options out there, of course, but they're certainly one of the most popular, and I think they will benefit eventually from that. The problem is, of course, as we've covered extensively, there's been a lot of backlash to that ruling in those states, and it's not really much easier to carry in most of them today than it was before the Supreme Court's ruling. So I don't think that surge in sales is going to come until later on down the line, and especially in a place like California, right, which has their handgun roster that's extremely restrictive, and I don't believe you can buy a Shield in California legally, which is the popular Smith & Wesson carry gun. So it might take a couple of years for that effect to actually be seen in their balance sheets. So I wouldn't expect
that's a good point.
Yeah, like it's not next quarter isn't going to see the effects of that, most likely. Maybe in Maryland, where people can actually get permits at the moment, but probably not in California and New York, which is really where if you're looking at financial gain, it's something that's going to matter to the balance sheet of a company like Smith & Wesson. You want to see a lot more people in California and New York being able to buy
the biggest markets.
They're huge markets. So But I think you're right. Mid to long term, that probably will have an impact. And so, I think I don't know what Smith and Wesson's stock price is at right now. I don't know how the market was perceiving them, but if it goes too low, maybe then it would be a good investment opportunity, because these numbers are really ugly for a single quarter, but it's unlikely that they're going to crash completely out. They're likely to have a pretty stable and secure financial footing moving forward. It's just not going to be the 2020 levels that we saw.